There are just a number of things that Nintendo does not need to do with the next Nintendo Switch or the next gen Switch or the Nintendo Switch 2. I'm not talking about a more powerful revision that's been rumored or anything like that, but the actual next Nintendo Switch. But before we get into that, please make sure you hit that like button and also subscribe if you enjoy daily gaming content, live streams, anime, and more, and hit that notification bell so you can get my videos first. Now let's talk about this, because recently I discussed PlayStation and how I was kind of done with what's going on there with the SSD and all of that. Some people took the video in terms of what I was saying and understood. Other people had a hard time deducing some comedy from that video from what I was actually saying. So in this video, we're going to move on and kind of focus in, because I did allude to some of those things in that video, talk about how I don't want to happen in the future. I said it's going to be like a whole nother video, and this is kind of that video, so you can just kind of connect the dots. If you haven't seen my previous video on PlayStation 5 and SSDs and all that and stuff that I was not happy about, make sure you check that one out. You know, you can go on the video, check it out. But anyway, let's get into the topic at hand, because we have very important business to get into. Nintendo, I am talking to the soul. I'm talking to you guys directly. Yes, Furukawa, I'm talking to you. Mr. Miyamoto, I'm talking to you. All of the execs. This needs to not be done. All digital system. Like, this is something that some people look at me and say, well, what do you mean? All digital is great. They're cheaper. They're this and that. I'm telling you guys, it is a farce. It is not something that is a good thing, to where the only place you can buy games is from that one supplier, that one person, like that one storefront. Think about it for a second. What if the only place that you could buy shoes was one place? Or what if the only place that you can buy groceries was one place? Or any type of consumer or type of thing that people need was only in one place? That can be catastrophic for consumers out there, because they can then manipulate things the way that they want it to be. Now, what I'm talking about is digital versus physical. Often, physical will be discounted before digital on many other systems. Heck, even on Nintendo's own systems, you can usually get physical games cheaper than digital games on Nintendo's storefront. Yes, they have sales every now and then, but for the most part, the physical Nintendo Switch games, first party or third party, are often cheaper. So having that option available from multiple different retailers creates competition to where that's better for the consumer out there. All digital systems with their, oh, you get a couple $100 off or $100 off or something like that, those are trying to remove that competition and those prices so they can control everything themselves. That's the reason why they give you $100 off a PlayStation 5 digital, despite it actually removing a cost from the system, because they want you to think it's an actual better deal, when in actuality, they're going to make more money off of your purchases, because they cut out the middleman. They cut out the retailers, and they know that you're not going to be getting those cheap games or used games or borrowing games in a normal traditional sense. You need to have somebody else's account and everything like that. So that's the interesting thing about that. So I would like Nintendo to stick to their guns like they've always stuck to when it comes to physical sales and when it comes to physical games. No all digital systems, no fake, oh, you get better value with this, when it's not, when it comes down to it. So keep with having every system with physical games. Now, the next thing up is memory. This was something that was a little bit of an issue when the Switch first launched, but as someone who has looked at SD memory and that type of memory over the years, I knew that they were going to fix itself, because SD cards were going to go down in price. Each 6 months they go down and go down to the point to where they're fairly cheap at this point for huge amounts of memory. So going to the next gen, please let's not have any type of expensive external memory to update your system or anything like that. We don't need expensive internal memory. We don't need massive installs with the games. We don't need that at all, because those are the things that PC has been dealing with, right? And now Microsoft and Sony are doing the exact same thing. And to me, it takes away from what being a console is kind of all about if the games aren't actually real, like no real physical games, because the games are installed to a hard drive and there's these huge installs that take up your space no matter what. The disc is useless. It's just a DRM check, just to make sure that you're not stealing it or something, you know? So I don't want that with Nintendo. And combine that with expensive memory. We're seeing some of these SSD prices that Sony and Microsoft have, and they're pretty pricey. So I would like Nintendo to keep with what they've got with SD if they can. Now, that's going to be tough, right? Because as the games get bigger, SSDs have that speed and they can kind of load things quicker, but there is a solution. There's always a solution. So in this next part, we're going to talk about things that Nintendo should do with the next Switch. And the first thing up here, to play off what I was saying, was advance the cartridge tech and size. Cartridge tech is fast. Maybe not as fast as like what Sony and Microsoft can do with the SSDs, but it's fast. And that cartridge tech that they used is old at this point. If Nintendo is doing research and development on new cartridge tech that is faster and also has bigger file sizes for it, that's their SSD. That's their built-in speed when it comes down to it. Because there was many games that were actually like PS3, 360, and sometimes even PS4, Xbox One that loaded faster on the Nintendo Switch than those other systems, of course, until PlayStation 5 and Xbox came out with those SSDs. But if Nintendo can find a way to improve that cartridge tech in terms of read speeds and what it can do, that would be the way to keep actual physical games to where you're playing off of that game and still be able to get certain games here and there, because the price of those games won't be as high now that they're reiterating on tech that they've already got with the cartridges. That cartridge tech, it's expensive. That's why a lot of the games, the file sizes have to somewhat be nerfed, or they have to pretty much make them, like, let's say you download some games that are off of it because the cartridge size. But if Nintendo can advance it and do it in a way that's affordable for everyone, which I do think they're working on that would solve this whole SSD and installs and all of that. Maybe it won't be quite as good as the Xbox and PlayStation, but honestly, it doesn't need to if you retain what actually makes a physical game a real physical game, like I did for the past like 30 years before these new systems came out. Now, the next thing, power, enhanced specs, help your devs out just a bit. Help the third-party devs, help yourself out. Obviously, the Switch, they used what they could at the time. In 2015, the Tegra X1 was the best mobile chip, and they needed to get something so they can get their dev kits ready for launch coming up. Because remember, it launched in early 2017. So that means you have to get those dev kits out there in 2016. So you have to pick something before then. And that was the best chip. It was the Tegra X1 at the time, which was really good at that time. But not at this point, it's getting a bit old compared to some of the new stuff. We have the Steam Deck that's out, and obviously the specs in there are pretty impressive. Although it doesn't come with the dock, you have to install every single game. I mean, there's other things with that, but still very impressive for the mobile tech. And it's been a number of generations at this point. Nvidia and Nintendo probably have something that's way better that they can use. That's not going to be too much more expensive in terms of what they originally developed with the Tegra X1 and the proprietary memory that Tegra has with that. So to me, I think that if they were able to advance that tech beyond, which we've heard some rumors with the whole Nvidia Lovelace and what's going on there, link in the description if you guys want to read that rumor and what Nintendo's working on there or potentially working on there with Nvidia. that could be a very good thing to put in the next Nintendo Switch. And obviously, they're going to put something stronger in there, but make sure that they don't have to have a third-party developer suggest to them, hey, you should put more RAM in there, because it looked like they were going to have maybe 3 or 2 gigabytes of RAM in the Nintendo Switch, and Capcom had to convince them to put 4 in there so we can do these type of games. So don't have that from the beginning. Just put enough to where it'd be good enough from there without having to get the suggestions from other developers. And I know a lot of you guys are gonna like what I say here. Me, this is something I'm just kind of like, but for other people, and also just to have a better ecosystem within what you are doing. Past system features with the enhanced RAM, the enhanced specs, you can put in these things. Even though they should have been in there anyway, you can put in these things. System features like folders, OS level voice chat, and themes. These are things that people have been asking for quite some time, and it rounds out your system way more nicely. Now, of course, the Nintendo Switch already proved that, hey, you don't necessarily need all of that. What you need is games, which we'll talk about, which is the most important thing. And that's just the normal, trivial thing that, of course, that is the obvious thing in terms of getting your launch ready, having that big launch game with the next Nintendo Switch. Don't go in lackadaisical like with the Wii U and say, okay, well, maybe Nintendo Land could be this next thing, or maybe New Super Mario Bros. Could be this next thing. No, have that big Mario, have that big Zelda, have that big game ready to go so it can help you move those systems and continue to move systems if there is any dips in software and what's coming out due to it being new or development cycles or whatever the case is. Now, if Nintendo doesn't do those certain things and does do the things that I said, I think that we have another huge hit on our hands going forward, and that's personally what I would like to see. So, what are your thoughts on what I had to say? Let me know in the comment section below. All right, guys, that wraps it up for this video here. Check out the links in the description. We've got Twitter. Go and give us a follow on there. Stay up to date on all the latest gaming news and information. Also, make sure you like, comment, and subscribe, and share this video if you can. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll catch you for the next one. Peace.